So if you're keeping track of the calendar, it is 21 days until Easter. Anybody excited about that? I get amped for Easter every single year. There's nothing like celebrating the fact that the tomb is empty, that Jesus has come and risen again. That is worth celebrating every day, but in particular on Easter Sunday, we get really excited about it. So for our church this year, there are 3 different services that you can go to. We're doing a 7 a.m. sunrise service. Any of my early people there? Okay, they are really loud. The rest of you are like, no, that's not me. That's why I'm not cheering right now. So we got a 7 a.m. sunrise service that we're doing over at the church property. And then right here in this room, there will be a 9 o'clock and an 11 o'clock. Do me a favor. Come to the 9 o'clock. I'm just going to say that. Please come to the 9 o'clock because there's going to be a lot of new people that are coming on that day. What time are they going to come to service? They're going to come to the 11 o'clock. And so serve Jesus by showing up to the 9 o'clock service. He will love you exactly the same if you didn't, but it would really make our lives a lot easier. So 9 and 11 is when we're doing service. And then in 13 days, we're doing our community Easter egg hunt, which is going to be a ton of fun for our community, 10,000 plus eggs. Thank you guys. Many of you all purchased eggs and have signed up to serve and be a part of that. Thank you for making that a possibility. It's going to be a great chance just to connect with people in our community. I am looking forward to that. So 21 days until Easter, 13 days until our egg hunt, and revival is happening when? Right here, right now. I believe that revival, as defined, we defined it last week, where revival is an improvement in the condition of something, the strengthening of something, or an instance when something becomes popular, active, or important. Again, I believe that faith is rising in our community. Faith is rising in our area. But I believe while it happens on a macro level, it also happens on a personal level. And so this morning, I kind of want to go away from the big picture stuff, and can I just cut right into the heart for each and every single one of us? You guys ready for this morning? I'm ready for this. I want to preach to myself if nobody else. So if you know Jesus, he had a group of people that he was hanging out with. He had 12 of them, and one of them, Judas Iscariot, was not so great compared to the others. And what I do often when reading the Bible, and I think that many of us are probably guilty of doing this, is we like to put ourselves in as superheroes of the faith. We're like, I'm like Paul, or I'm like Peter. I'm going to be the one who walks on water. I'm going to be the one who goes after it. I'm going to be the one full of faith. And in reality, if we were going to authentically examine our lives, we would see that sometimes we have more in common with Judas than we do with the other 11. Anybody else feel like that sometimes? I know for me, that's a part of walking out this life. And so we're going to take a look at good lessons from a bad man this morning. So if you got your Bibles, flip to the book of Matthew. Chapter 26 is where we're going to be, at least at the beginning of it. We're going to be all over the New Testament. We're going to look at the life of Judas today. If you're new to the Bible, let me just kind of explain to you who Judas is and what he did. Judas was one of the 12 main people that hung out with Jesus. And as Jesus is in this last week of life, and as Jesus is getting ready to have his life taken from him, Judas is the one who betrays him. Judas is the one that rats out where Jesus is, and he does it for a sum of money, and Jesus ends up being arrested because of what Judas did. He ends up being crucified, and that leads to the whole resurrection story. Judas is a central piece of the story, but he is the one who did not do things very well, and there's great value to be learned from that. So let's look at Matthew chapter 26, starting in verse 14. We're going to read it through the 25th verse. As always, if you need a Bible, let us know. We'd love to give you one. This book is active, living, and breathing. It will change your life. We do have the verses on the screen if you don't have one, but seriously, if you need a Bible, I'd love to give you one. Starting in verse 14. Then one of the 12, whose name was Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and said, "What will you give me if I deliver him being Jesus, over to you?" And they paid him 30 pieces of silver. And from that moment, he sought an opportunity to betray him. Now, on the first day of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus saying, "Where will you have us prepare for you to eat the Passover?" And he said, go into the city to a certain man and say to him, the teacher says, my time is at hand. I will keep the Passover at your house with my disciples. And the disciples did as Jesus had directed them, and they prepared the Passover. I just love the radical faith of the disciples right there. That Jesus is like, hey, if you could just leave and go find a guy and just say, can we use your house for a celebration? And they're like, okay, that seems like sense. We're going to go and just ask this random guy in the street if we can use your house for a party. And the guy says yes. Just the faith they have to believe that what Jesus says is going to happen is extraordinary. So they do that. Verse 20, when it was evening, he reclined at the table with the 12. So it's him and his main homeboys. As they were eating, he said, truly I say to you, one of you will betray me. And they were very sorrowful and began to say to him, one after another, is it I, Lord? And he answered, he who has dipped his hand in the dish with me will betray me. The Son of Man goes as it is written of him, but woe to that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been better for that man if he had not been born. Judas, who would betray him, answered, is it I, Rabbi? And he said to him, you have said so. Saying, you called it. You're the one. You're the one who's going to do that. And in this life of Judas, we see the moment where he betrayed Jesus, but oftentimes I look at just the end of his life and I discount what happened leading up to that moment. Because Judas was actually set up for success, he just missed the opportunity. So if you're taking notes, the first thing I want to share with you this morning is that your seat matters, but not as much as you think. The seat you're sitting in matters, but not as much as you think. Let's do a run through of Judas's life, because he had some really cool opportunities that I haven't had, that you haven't had, because we live now and Jesus lived then. So let's go all the way back with Judas to Luke chapter 6. This is where Judas is called. Jesus could have been born at any point throughout creation. And Jesus was born at a specific time, and he has a specific group of 12 men that he calls to follow after him. Luke chapter 6, verse 12, in these days he went out to the mountain to pray. So Jesus is praying to the Father saying, God, would you please illuminate and let me know who these 12 guys are? God, I got to pick 12 guys to change the world. God, let me know who they are. He's praying all night, it says, and he continued in prayer to God. And when the day came, he got to call his disciples, and he chose from them 12 whom he named apostles. Simon, whom he named Peter, and Andrew, his brother, and James, and John, Philip, and Bartholomew, and Matthew, and Thomas, and James, the son of Alphaeus, and Simon, who is called the Zealot, and Judas, the son of James, and Judas Iscariot, who became a traitor. So to begin with, he's got something stacked in his favor, the fact that he is one of the 12 main guys that gets to walk with Jesus, gets to hang out with him, gets to witness the miracles. Jesus, in fact, actually sends Judas out on a special mission. In Matthew 10, he called the 12 disciples in verse 1 and gave them authority over unclean spirits. So he says to Judas, he's one of the 12, he goes, Judas, you have authority over unclean spirits. Judas, you have the ability to cast them out. Judas, you have the ability to heal every disease and every affliction. The names of the 12 apostles are these. First, Simon, who is called Peter, and Andrew his brother, James the son of Zebedee, and John his brother, Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew the tax collector, James the son of Alphaeus and Thaddeus, Simon the zealot, and Judas Iscariot, who betrayed him. So Judas is not only picked out of the group, but he's given great tools and great opportunities saying, you can do this, Judas. Like, it's really cool when somebody is for you and cheers for you. Like, that feels really good. Imagine if it was Jesus. Like, that's a really good day right there where Jesus says, I'm for you, not against you. You can do this. And I'm sure Judas is feeling pretty good in this moment. And Judas was with Jesus according to Mark chapter 3, verse 14. He appointed the 12 whom he also named apostles so that they might be with him. He's roommates with the Son of God. Good roommate assignment right there, Judas. He's with them and that he might send them out to preach. And not only did Judas get to be sent out to preach, but Judas ended up rising up the ranks within the 12. John chapter 12, verse 4 through 6 says, and Judas Iscariot, one of the disciples, Little caveat, he who was about to betray him said, why was this ointment not sold for 300 denarii? That was last week's message, and given to the poor. He said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief, and having charge of the money bag, he used to help himself to what was put into it. So Judas not only had all the equipping that the other disciples had, he was also the one that had risen up and was the treasurer of these 12 people. That's a good setup right there. That's a very, very good setup. I don't know what your pedigree is like, but Judas is set up fairly well. And the last thing I want to share with you about the life of Judas before we get into some of his mishaps is Mark chapter 14, verse 17, where it says, and when it was evening, he came with the 12. They're about to break bread right now. And as they were reclining at the table and eating, Jesus said, truly, I say to you, one of you will betray me, the one who is eating with me. They began to be sorrowful and said to him one after another, is it I? And he said to them, it is one of the 12, one who is dipping bread into the dish with me. For the Son of Man goes as it is written of him, but woe to the man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been better for that man if he had not been born, referencing Judas. And if you notice that passage where it says that he was dipping into the same bowl, you had to be at the seat of honor in order to share the bowl with the person who was the head of the table. So Judas, one of the 12 that was called, was given authority to cast out demons, was given authority to go out and share the gospel, had risen up to the point where he was in charge of all the finances, and now was sitting right next to Jesus during a celebratory meal in the seat of honor. That's a good setup for somebody. And what I do is I look at his mistake, but I got to recognize that he is put in a really, really good spot. And what I want to say to you is that your seat does matter. Like where you sit in life does matter. When you hang out with people that are of a high caliber, it rubs off on you. We talk about this, that your circle is a big deal. The people that you have relationships with is a big deal. I've said, show me your friends, I'll show you your future. That's a big deal. And I believe that community is so important. So I do believe you need to look at those around you and your seat matters. But I'm going to say also that that's not what this message is about. So lean into this. Please catch this. You could have the best seat in the house, but if your character is not there, you're going to lose it. You could have the best setup in life and you could raise up the ranks, but if your character is not there, you will lose your seat. Insert case study of Judas, who had all of these opportunities, all of this great fortune, but as he rose up the ranks, he didn't have the character to undergird the seating assignment that he'd been given. You see, in our society, we like to highlight sparkle over substance. Now, maybe you're not a sparkly person. Maybe you are a sparkly person. I don't know what your viewpoint is on sparkle, but here's what I mean. It's so easy to post the vacation picture or to highlight your vacation moment and say, man, God is so good. I'm so thankful he's allowed me to go on this trip. Life is wonderful. But the reality is while God has been good to you, the reason why you're on vacation is not because of the goodness of God. It was because you're in debt. Like you're highlighting, man, life looks so good. But under the surface, you are just burying yourself deeper and deeper. Or the Valentine's Day picture, we're like, man, life is so good. Me and my honey, this is wonderful. We're out for the greatest meal, but you fought the whole way there and the whole way back. I know nobody did that on the way to church, right? All of your kids were ready as soon as you got up this morning. Shoes were on. Nobody was hunting shoes down. Nobody raised their voice once on the way to church. But you walk in, God bless you, everything's wonderful. And I'm not saying don't put your best foot forward, but you need to have the character behind the image that you're trying to portray. I'm so glad I'm at church right now. I'm here with my bestie. This is the best moment, but you're not talking about the fact that you're talking behind that person's back every other day of the week. Do you have the character to undergird the assignment of saying that you are a believer in Jesus? If you're going to fight for something, fight for having the right character, not the right seat. Because if you get in the right seat and you don't have the character, you're going to lose the seat. If you have the right character, you're going to gain the seat you're looking for. Proverbs says it so well in chapter 10, verse 9. Whoever walks in integrity walks securely, but he who makes his way crooked will be found out. Proverbs chapter 22, verse 1. A good name is to be chosen rather than great riches, and favor is better than silver or gold. Your seat is important, but your character is so much more important. You got to have character that you can stand on. Mike, can you help me out real quick? I don't have a great construction background. I like to fake it until I make it. But what I have learned, which is not a good idea in like large scale construction. Like you can do that with like a Matchbox car, right? You don't want to do that with a house because the house will fall down. Not a good idea. So what I want to paint a picture with you is that when you are standing on something and when you're leaning into something, the higher you go, the more important it is that you have a stable foundation. Thank you, guys. I'm good now. I appreciate it. Perfect. You guys did so good. Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Mike, for helping out. Everybody is named Mike in this church. That's how it works. So what I want to show you is we have a board that is solid. This board is doing very, very well. The integrity is good on this board right here. The integrity on this board right here is not as good as the other one. This board has integrity issues. So let me show you what it's like when you have good integrity. When you have good integrity, I could just put it on the floor right here. You guys didn't know you were in the construction zone this morning. And watch this. It has integrity, and I'm going to go like this. Did y'all see that? Man, that board just supported a 189-pound man with no issue. Don't be throwing shade at me right now. I'm a little bit overweight. It's okay. So, the cool thing about a board that has integrity to it is that when you rise up a little bit, you can actually stand on the board. It has the ability to withstand the weight of the person that's on it. So this is really good when you don't have any kinks or you don't have anything that's not correct in your integrity. You can withstand the weight. But here's the thing about the board that's lacking integrity. Okay, so watch this. This board flawed, very, very flawed, has chinks in it. Here we go. Man, it supported me again. Good news, right? Your integrity will carry you up to a certain point. But as your position rises, as your position begins to have more and more influence, as your seat begins to level up more and more, the board that could support you at one season of your life now is not able to support you when you reach the next season of life. And what I find is that we have chinks in our integrity, chinks in our character, and we don't find out about them until we've reached a point where it's too late. And for Judas, what I see, if you guys could pull those chairs out for me, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. What I find for Judas is that he never dealt with his integrity issues. And so when he rose up the ranks, those began to be revealed in his life. And for us, as we're trying to go after Jesus, as we're trying to have personal revival, I think you got to evaluate and say, where are the chinks that are in my armor? Where are the problems that I'm having? They're going to cause me to fail in time. I'm telling you, your seat is important. Your character is even more important. Now, since we're talking about character, can we just talk about the character of Jesus for a second? Because it's pretty phenomenal. I'll tell you, point 2 is the love of Jesus is irrationally consistent. You see, Jesus' ways are so much higher than our ways. They're so much different than our ways. We've read it 100 times. We'll read it again. Isaiah 55, verse 8 through 9. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are my ways your ways, declares the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts higher than your thoughts. Jesus has a greater way of evaluating things. John chapter 2, verse 23 says, now when he was in Jerusalem at the Passover feast, many believed in his name when they saw the signs that he was doing. But Jesus, on his part, did not entrust himself to them because he knew all people and needed no one to bear witness about man, for he himself knew what was in man. If you're going to highlight something or underline a part of this passage, it is in verse 24 where it says he knew all people. That means that the stuff that's unsettling in my life, Jesus knows all about that. The things that are less than ideal in your life, Jesus knows all about that. Jesus knew the inadequacies of Judas before he ever called him. And that makes the reality that Jesus called him even more significant to me. Because it wasn't as if Jesus knew that he was going to be a home run. Jesus knew there was going to be issues with them, yet he still decided to call him out. And he knew how bad he was going to be. John chapter 6, verse 70 and 71 says, Jesus answered them, did I not choose you, the 12? And yet one of you is a devil. He calls Judas a devil. And he spoke of Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, for he, one of the 12, was going to betray him. And so the question I need to ask myself is, why did Jesus choose to share his life with Judas if he knew who Judas was going to become? Why did Jesus have brotherly affection for Judas when he realized he was going to be the one that betrayed him? Why did Jesus entrust Judas with all of these funds, knowing that he was going to end up being the criminal that stole from it? Why did Jesus wash the feet of Judas right before he turned him into the government? And it's because Jesus is fully consistent in his love. And Jesus has grace upon grace upon grace. And we could learn something from that lesson. It's because Christ irrationally loves us. It's because the ends do not justify the means. You all are familiar with that statement, correct? That we often walk a certain direction because we know what's going to happen in the end, and if the end was going to be different, we would behave differently, when in fact we should behave the way that we're supposed to, because our character should be the reason why we behave that way. But in our society, we only look at the end rather than the character that undergirds that. The ends do not justify the means, which means that I need to love my neighbor when I don't get anything out of it. You know, my neighbor is in the room right now, and recently we had an issue with our propane tank. We were out on vacation, and people showed up to fix it, and I gave him a call, and I'm like, hey, can you redo my whole propane system in my house? And he's like, yeah, sure, no problem, because that's the kind of neighbor he is. And at the end, I'm like, well, what can I do for you? He says, nothing. I don't need anything. You're just my neighbor. You know, it's good to have people in your life that love you, not because they can get anything from you, but just because they're called to love. You're supposed to love your neighbor no matter if they can return the favor or if they can't return the favor. You're supposed to love your spouse whether they're deserving of it or whether they're not deserving of it. You're supposed to love your kids, your boss, the stranger, the person who checks your groceries, not because of what they can do for you, but because what Christ has done for you and the example that he's set. We are called to love unconditionally. Jesus says this in John 11:25. He says, I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. Underline, highlight, circle, tweet, sticky note, whatever you have to do, the word whoever. The grace of Jesus, according to John chapter 11, is accessible to whoever believes in me. And as the worship team's starting to come back up, this is the heart of the gospel right here. That we're not a part of an exclusive club in this room. This is not where you just get a VIP invitation and only the select are able to come to the throne of Jesus. And that if you're good enough, you get the benefits. No, the reality is that when you're not good enough, you still get the benefits because of how good Jesus is. And those benefits are far greater than anything a VIP club could ever give you. So Jesus served Judas. Jesus loved Judas. Jesus died for Judas. And that preaches so well, right? We're like, yeah, I'm so glad that when I screw up, Jesus is for me, but we're supposed to be like him. Which means we need to be the people that are loving Judas. We need to be the people that are serving Judas. We need to be the people that are willing to do whatever it takes to share the love of Christ with Judas. I think if there was, can I be vulnerable for a second with you guys? All right, good. Just, I gotta go ahead really loud right there. Okay. So I feel permission to be able to do this now. Church around Easter oftentimes becomes a bait and switch. What happens is we talk about evangelism, right? Because evangelism, sharing your faith. We believe that people should meet Christ, meet Jesus, and we're all for that. And what happens is we do whatever we can to get people into the door so that we can share the message of Jesus with them and hoping they'll respond. And if they don't, we just move on to the next person. Would you still love your neighbor the same if they didn't come to church? Would you still love your neighbor the same way regardless if their behavior changes or not? We're not trying to bait people into the gospel. We're just trying to love like Jesus loved. And I believe in going to church, and I believe in inviting people to come to church. And well, I think it's really, really important, and we should do that. Yes and amen. And next week, Mike Sigmund's going to preach a brilliant message, I already know, on what it means to share our faith, and I'm all for it. But before we get to that, do we have the character that says we're going to authentically love people regardless? Because that's what it is to be a little Christ. That's what it is to be a Christian. Jesus knew that Judas was going to betray him, and he loved him anyways. You want to talk about an example of character? That's a pretty good example of what it means to love people unconditionally. There are people in our community, in our city, in our neighborhood, in your family that need you to show them the radical love of Jesus. So that when they do come to a church, or when somebody does share the gospel with them, they go, you know, that lines up with what I'm seeing. Gandhi was quoted saying this: I love your Christ, but you Christians are nothing like your Christ. Man, is that a gut punch right there? I don't want to be that person. I want to be the person that because Jesus died and loved me and I received all the love I could ever need from the one who saved my soul, that I'm going to love people and love people and love people. And if I invest my life into loving somebody and they don't return the favor back to me, that's okay because Jesus already did. So I want you guys to stand to your feet this morning. I want you to search a little bit deeper right now, okay? This is a internal evaluation right now. Where is your conviction and where is your character when it comes to the lost? We're not talking about strategy. We'll talk about that later. We're not talking about goals. We can talk about that later. We're not talking about what seat you're going to be in. We're talking about the character that's underneath that. Is it sufficient to hold the weight of the people that are going to come to know Jesus in 21 days? Because listen here, I believe people are going to meet Christ on Easter Sunday. I believe there's going to be people like me who were lost, who are now found because of Jesus. People that aren't bad becoming good, people that are dead that are now alive. I believe that's going to happen. And I believe when they walk through these doors, they're going to see people that authentically live out their faith because they have the character to support it. Would you pray with me this morning? Jesus, we are thankful for your example. Jesus, we are grateful that you showed us what it is like to love somebody who didn't deserve it. First and foremost, Judas, but also us. God, I pray that deep within our core, deep within our spirit, we would have a conviction to love like you loved. To not just do the church thing, but to authentically love you and love those who are in this world that you died for. God, I pray for the parts of our heart that are unclean and impure, that you would make those into what they need to be. Anything that's unworthy in us, God, would you get that out? Would you give us a new heart this morning? And I pray this in Jesus' name.